Welcome to Political News and Views with your host, Congressman Towns of Brooklyn, New York, representing the 10th Congressional District, programming with your concerns in mind.
Committee will come to order. Who is watching the backs of the American people to preserve and create jobs?
And now, your host, Congressman Towns.
Welcome to News and Views. I'm delighted today with this show because people that I've had the opportunity to work with in different capacities and to have them to come and sort of share their experiences with you and to let you know about their New York connections. I think that's very, very important too, because there are people that work on our committee staff here in Washington, D.C. So let me just sort of go around the room, actually, right in order. Let me just say, why don't you just introduce yourself and talk a little bit about what you're doing and how you arrived. I mean, I think that's important too.
Of course. Well, Chairman Towns, it's a pleasure to be back on the Hill. I had the distinct pleasure of volunteering for you during high school. I'm from your district, right in Brooklyn, New York. I was born in the district, raised, and after attending Brooklyn Tech, I went on to Harvard College, got my Bachelor of Arts in government, and during one summer, I again had an opportunity to intern in your office right here on Capitol Hill. So after recently getting my master's, I knew this is exactly where I wanted to return. So right now I'm working for your committee as a professional staff member, and I'm really excited about all the legislation that's being considered right now.
Your undergraduate was at Harvard, and your master's is from where?
Columbia.
And what?
Master of Public Administration.
Okay, excellent, excellent. Let me hear about you.
Sure, Chairman Towns. Well, like Rochelle, I'm back in D.C. via New York. I lived in New York for 7 years. I went to law school in New York.
Give us that name again.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, sorry, Chairman Towns. Chris Stazak, and I'm an investigative attorney on your committee. Lived in and worked in New York City. In fact, I was on the board of directors of Bedford-Stuyvesant Restoration Corporation for 7 years. And worked at the World Trade Center for a couple of years. And fortunately, I left the World Trade Center just a few months before September 11th. So my roots in New York actually go back to the beginning, to my childhood, and as I mentioned, right through school. And now, in terms of my work for you on the committee, as I mentioned, I'm working on with a team of people on investigations. One thing we've been working on is a field hearing that we had back in April, as you know, in the district at Brooklyn Borough Hall, to try to keep track of where all the stimulus money is going and make sure that that money is getting down to the people, getting people back to work, getting jobs for them, job training. And we're just trying to make sure that all the money that is being spent for those purposes is actually going for those purposes, because as you have said many times, every dollar that we can stop from waste and fraud is a dollar back in the pockets of the American people and New Yorkers. So we're working hard to do that every day. We're also trying to keep track and find out what happened with the Bank of America investigation, because what happened there was two big companies announced a private deal back in September of 2008 with no mention of any need for taxpayer assistance. And then a few months later in January, it turns out that the American taxpayer bailed out that deal to the tune of $40 billion. And we're just all asking why, because all that happened in secret, and we just want to know why the taxpayers had to come to the rescue of these big banks, and you've been on top of that, and we're going to try to get to the bottom of it at some point.
That's a big one. That's a big one. And we're going to come back and talk more about that too, because I think that's very, very important, because we always concerned with waste, fraud, and abuse. Yes. Give us your name and your area of responsibility.
Well, thank you again, Mr. Towns, for having me on, Mr. Chairman. I am Beverly Britton Fraser, and, like the other people on this panel, I, too, spent the majority of my life in Brooklyn. Started out at Prospect Heights High School, which I know it's just a little bit, actually, it's in the district. And then I went on to college at Cornell University. Then I stayed in New York, and I went to Buffalo Law School. And all of my professional life as an attorney, I've been in Brooklyn. You've known me for pretty much all of my professional life. I started out, defending the indigent at Legal Aid, and then I started in the court system, as you know, working with the judges in the New York City Civil Court. And here I am in Washington, with all of my Brooklyn roots, doing the work that's important to the people of New York. So I'm really happy and excited to be here, and I'm very proud of everything that we're doing.
Very good. And What about you? Name and area of responsibility as well.
My name is Ophelia Rivas. I'm actually from your district, Brooklyn, Cypress Hills. I actually went to City University of New York, York College, and it's an amazing educational foundation, and thanks to the Edward T. Rogowski Internship Program that allows CUNY students the opportunity to come to Washington and intern. And I interned for you two years ago at your personal office and worked really hard and graduated with honors, magna cum laude, and here I am now working for you. So I just want the viewers to know that it's not impossible, and if they just strive, education and internships are the keys. And if you have to have that passion and really want it, and you can achieve it. Doesn't matter where you're from. I'm from Brooklyn, you know.
All right. You're from the district. Okay, now you're working in Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
I think that's great. I think that's marvelous. Let's talk about some of the issues that, this committee has broad jurisdiction. I mean, just about every area of government, we can sort of like get involved in it. And there's a lot of things to be involved in, especially today more than ever. I mean, you mentioned the merger between, of course, Bank of America and Merrill Lynch, and which was a private deal that started out, and then all of a sudden the government is putting money, into it. So I think that a legitimate question, which is something that your committee, your investigators are looking into, as to how did the government get involved in this private deal? Why do you think that the government would come in terms of a private deal and say, wait a minute, here's money, and at the same time, we're talking about people needing jobs and opportunities, and I'm not sure this is providing it.
You're right, Chairman Towns, and that's the mystery, the question that you've been asking at all these hearings, and as you know, we've had 3 now, is how does a private deal suddenly become a taxpayer bailout with average New Yorkers and average Americans on the hook to complete the deal to a lot of money, and hopefully at some point they'll get it back. But really, ultimately, the question is, it's unanswered at this point, and it is a mystery, as you mentioned, and it was all done in secret, which is obviously not consistent with how things should be done in the government, and that's what you've been talking about every day and at every hearing, and particularly since you become chairman of the Oversight Committee. So we're going to keep working on it and try to get to the bottom of it and find out why this suddenly went from a private deal to a big taxpayer bailout. So we're just going to keep moving forward and see what we can find out.
Another area that we're concerned about in the committee is the fact that these radio stations, especially the minority radio stations, black and Hispanic ones in particular, are really seem to having a hard time, and it's based on the Arbitron ratings that, as you know, that this is a new system and that's in place. What do you think is going wrong, or what has gone wrong, that has led to the fact that the Wendy Williams show was #1 in New York, and now, last I heard, before I think she left, was like number 14. I mean, how do you go from #1 to number 14 when the system that's supposed to be the same format is the same, all of that, and of course that's something that I think that somebody has to explain. So how do we deal with this whole Arbitron thing? I mean,
well, I'm really glad you asked, because, that's one of the things that I'm working on in the Oversight Committee, and I think it's really commendable that you as chairman has taken up such an important issue. But what has happened, and I think the public needs to know, is that minority radio stations, whether they are urban formatted and they're focused more towards the African American population, or whether they're focused more towards the Hispanic population, they're undergoing such a massive loss of revenue that many of them are in danger of closing their doors. Now, you're probably saying to yourself, well, why should we be concerned? That's a huge problem, because if we lose the radio stations that speak for the voices of at least 50% of New Yorkers, you will never get it back, first of all, and secondly, large numbers of people will lose a voice that comes into their homes as a form of entertainment, and that they can relate to on a daily basis. Now, you ask, well, what is the problem? Well, unfortunately, we have a situation in which there's a new rating system. Now, as you know, Nielsen is the company that rates